Hi there. Just a quick video on this thing here, 3iXAM, which is a quite a name. Basically, I just clocked a video on this, and I looked at the product because it looked interesting, not in the way you might expect. And it's advertised as an innovative 3D editor created by designers for designers, and it's Mac only. And you have a free demo. It's in beta, and it's going to be a paid piece of software later. And looking down the website, it's an instrument for creating 3D design in all spheres and nebulous cross-platform rendering. Doesn't really say how. System requirements, virtual hands. Don't know what that means. Convenient control panel. There's the cool. That tells me nothing. Don't know what that means. Design appropriate variants of project performance or otherwise features relevant to his style, thus speeding up the work. Basically, whichever metaverse you want, you can create projects for the metaverse and immediately upload them wherever you want. And it's going to be paid at some point, but right now it's a beta. And going to put this simply, don't buy this. Don't go near this. Effectively, I think this is scam's not the right word, but it's advertised in the video I saw as a potential alternative for Blender. But really, what it is, under the hood, yeah, that noise happens every time you open it. It is effectively a reskin of Blender with an interface that looks like this. And this is, if you've got a keen eye, this is actually a modification of the existing Blender splash screen. And yeah, it has this pseudo-modernistic interface thing, which looks charitably like something. I can't find any nice things to say about it, so I'm going to say nothing at all. Anyway, there's this, just a big block of tools. And under the hood, this is just, given the way it interacts, this is just Blender. And how is this possible? Well, basically, if you come in here, there's this thing called Blender apps. And that's what I think this is, because by default, when you interact with Blender, you can modify the entire interface, the entire application. The front end of it is accessible via Python, right? And I was working on a project I called Remix, which is basically about doing Blender but making the UX a bit better. So I've got quite a bit of time spent under the hood playing with the interface files for Blender, right? But Blender Apps is something a bit different. It's basically an initiative they brought out last year to create specialized versions. I think it's like I've not looked into this, I've been meaning to. But basically it's an initiative to create specialized, stripped down versions of Blender with some new tools they've created, which is kind of cool and very, very interesting. But really what this is for is like focused pseudo applications for single purpose stuff, presumably accessing Blender's API under the hood and just exposing what you want with greater control over the interface for little demos and things like this. I don't know how far it can go. I've not looked at it enough, but that appears to be what this is. But yeah, so if we look, more evidence that this is just Blender. Well, for a start, that's a very good thing. But if we go into rendering, for example, and go to render settings, they've simplified this for some reason. And apparently somewhere on the website they mentioned they've got a new render engine that's very fast. Where does it say that? It says that somewhere, apparently. Integrate your devices into a single system of 3D farm. It allows to increase rendering speeds by 10 times. Well, that's just nonsense. Oh, God, I hate this. Anyway, coming back to this, we can see, if you're familiar with Blender, in fact, let's just open it. Let's open up OG actual Blender. And if we go into our render settings here, we'll start to see some familiar settings, apart from some being stripped away. So there we go, file format. I don't need to really go into this too much, but yeah, this is basically a Blender app, and I wouldn't have a problem with that, right? My issue is not necessarily with the fact that someone has made a relatively comprehensive pseudo version of Blender. Yeah, see, there we go. We just got a few like physics modifiers exposed in a separate menu. The camera is, yeah. I've played with this for a little while. I'm not going to go into the UX of it. Basically, the experience of using this is kind of awful. It's worse than it's worse than Blender. There's no, I have issue with Blender's default way of doing things, because I find that the user experience inside Blender, I think, is kind of subpar, to put it bluntly. And this has made it worse. In fact, it's completely incoherent. There's just tools scattered all over the place. We've got this thing here, material library. And again, if we try and apply material, I don't even know how to apply these, but we look inside the material parameters. These are just Blender's material parameters. Click this, you'll probably get, nope, we can't change the surface type. So this is just, it says universal, but this will just be a principled BSDF. And we've got all of the properties from a principled BSDF shader, but with none of the editability. So I don't know who this is for. Because again, playing with this briefly, the workflow, is this a 3D cursor? I don't even know what this is. Add an empty, add an effect. So yeah, this is kind of a version of Blender with no workflow, and a really weird, really weird interface. I'm not trying to besmirch the name of the product. In principle, I wouldn't have a problem with this if two things. One, it was just a developer saying, I made a cool thing based on Blender that's just fun. Like, I like this sort of like cyberpunk style, and the tools are where I want them to be. I'd have absolutely no problem with that. I'd be like, cool, more power to you. This is an awesome little project. Have fun with it. Sick. Don't let me put you off. My problem with this really is this website, because they're trying to sell this for a start. And they've got two tiers, and there's very little actual information about what this does. It's just vague, nebulous fluff, right, about what this is supposed to be for. And it's just positioned as a new tool without really substantiating why it's good, why it's new, or what they've changed. And ultimately, they've just made a version of Blender that works worse than Blender and looks kind of weird, which leads me to believe this is a scam. And also the fact they're selling it, for those unaware, that Blender is obviously open source. It's covered by the GPL, which is a very common open source license. And one of the rules of the GPL is you kind of can't sell it. And there's, well, you can't, you have to disclose that there's a thing inside development called infection, right? The GPL as a license means that there's limitations to how you can interact with the code. You can't just reskin a GPL thing and say, oh, I can sell this. You have to have, if you build a bit of software and you use open source components covered by the GPL, generally you disclose them, you continue to release the source for that, or you disclose that you've released it unmodified. You kind of have to, it's very wibbly wobbly and legalese, but it's difficult to sell something using open source components unless you've either developed substantially different stuff on top of it, or you have to manage the ways in which you interact with the open source components of your product, right? That's just how it is. It's how license works. It's there to keep these things free, right? To stop things. It's exactly for this purpose. This is exactly the kind of thing the GPL is there to stop, where someone has used, clearly they've got a launcher they've sat in front, which is probably the only bit they've actually developed, which is probably a native Mac application. And then they have just gotten a Blender app, and they've just sort of thrown something together. The degree of love and care, I'm not going to talk about. It's not really my real issue with this. I think the application's bad, but that's not the end of my criticisms. But yeah, they're trying to sell it, and they shouldn't be. In part because they can't. They don't seem to have really developed much beyond what is available to anyone under the license of a free open source piece of software. So legally, it's kind of iffy. They're not currently selling it, so right now they haven't actually done anything wrong. But yeah, they don't seem to have actually done anything to justify why they should be able to charge for this. And that's beyond the fact you get to the product. The product, in quotes, is just bad, But the other thing that's very iffy, which makes me think this is a scam, is we start looking into the rest of the website, and going to the About Us section, this is already kind of a lot of this language stinks of crypto-esque grifter language. But if you go into the About Us section, I've not read this video, but watched this video, but we've got extra elements of the 3 whatever system, a game console. They're not making a game console, and especially won't look like that. This is just 3D spam. This is nonsense. But this is just courting credulous people to invest and get involved with them. 3D VT interactive table. That I don't know what that is. I'm not the other elements of the 3 something. There's no ecosystem to speak of. They've reskinned the Blender app. There is no ecosystem. What would an interactive table be? What would it do? Products like this do not succeed. They just don't. Laptops for designers. There we go. And probably thin laptop, looks very concepty. Submit the application in the investment section. So if we go to the investment section, is there an investment section? Let's have a look. Submit your application. It's just a contact form. So from what I can see, FAQ. Let's look at that. How long is the free beta period? October 2023. How to learn. So let me guess. BlendX import IX. Oh, they've got a .ixam format. They've probably done that themselves. But yeah, I don't really know what this product is. And from the looks of it, it seems to either be they've found someone who's developed a thing, a fun little project. I imagine somewhere, and they've said, look, can we buy this off you? And they've built up all of this scammy nonsense around it, or they've developed this themselves, and I don't really know what the end goal is here. They've done something quick to look like a finished product that looks futuristic-y to underpin the idea of gathering investors for nonsensical things like building a game console or a interactive table. I recommend don't use this, don't download this, don't even go near the website. I don't like the fact that I've signed in to their website to get a license of this. But I'd personally stay away from this. And, if you're curious, there must be some other videos out there on how this thing works. But basically, imagine Blender, but worse. Is kind of the simple answer to that, I suppose. And yeah, stay away from this. It kind of sucks. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Sorry for the audio quality. I'm on a laptop, sat on my sofa. But I just wanted to put this video out there because it's kind of interesting. Anyway, bye.